I'm sure we've all been wronged by someone at some point in our lives and wished we could give them a piece of our mind. Unfortunately, not every interpersonal relationship gives us the freedom to speak freely. It's a perfectly natural emotional response that most people have, but the majority don't act upon it. Well, Batman Beyond introduced a character who would step in on our behalf and punish those that were mistreating others. Not in a criminal sense, no. It was always the everyday, casual cruelty that people show towards each other, often without even noticing it. Armed with a laser whip, he was going to beat some sense into these callous people and make them change their ways. He referred to himself as Payback, and that's exactly what he wanted to get. Payback for the hurt feelings of others. So Payback was a brand new villain created specifically for Batman Beyond, making his only appearance in the self-titled episode Payback. Having said that, I think that there are at least two villains that inspired him. The most obvious one to point out is the character that inspired his look. Payback's costume evokes the Phantasm, a mysterious figure wearing black and grey. This is entirely fitting because both the Phantasm and Payback use a similar trick to hide their identity and throw the audience off. The Phantasm was voiced by Stacy Keach, who also played Carl Beaumont in the film, making viewers suspect him of being the Phantasm. This was intentional misdirection, as their real identity turned out to be someone completely left field, his daughter, Andrea. In Payback's case, the obvious suspect is Howard Lewis, who works at the centre that links all of the beneficiaries of Payback's attacks. Each of the victims was connected to someone that had attended the Gotham Youth Counselling Centre, a place where troubled youth could get the help they needed. So it's not a huge leap of logic to assume that Howard would have wanted to help these troubled kids solve their problems. While group therapy helps them emotionally, it doesn't necessarily stop the bad behaviour of others. Enter Payback. The first target we meet is an uncaring employer that doesn't respect his teenage employee's time. Even when Batman saves him, we see that he is a deeply unpleasant person. Rather than showing gratitude to Batman for saving him, he instead chews him out for not taking the fight outside. Maybe he should have let Payback dish out a little bit of justice before intervening. While undercover at the centre, posing as a kid that needs help, although it didn't require much acting, Terry learns of a future target of Payback, a cheating boyfriend. Again, another dishonest louse, but hardly a criminal. It's abundantly clear that someone at the centre is Payback, and Howard fits the bill. A genius sculptor that uses the same sort of laser whip to cut metal for his sculptures. However, after Batman confronts him and roughs him up a bit, he learns that Payback was attacking someone else at that exact moment. Oops. In the elder Batman's mind, that really only leaves one other suspect, Dr. Stanton. But rather than rushing in and potentially hurting an innocent man, again, they decide to lure Payback out by having Terry complain about the way Bruce Wayne treats him during group therapy. Bruce then attends the opening of a new hotel owned by the Vreeland family to act as bait. And Payback bites. After attacking Bruce Wayne and getting trounced by Batman, it is revealed that Payback is actually Dr. Stanton's son, Kenny. Kenny had briefly appeared earlier in the episode to see if his dad could spend some time with him that evening, only for Dr. Stanton to say that he has too many troubled children to take care of. And that was central to Payback's motives. While he was emulating his father, to a certain extent, by helping these troubled kids deal with people causing them problems, he wasn't doing it for benevolent reasons. He just wanted his dad to be less busy, so that they could spend some time together. The irony is that Dr. Stanton dedicated his life to helping Gotham's youth, but at the cost of his son Kenny's happiness. Now, the twist with a child pretending to be an adult has been used with another Batman villain in the past, one that didn't appear in any of the DCAU shows, and that is Anarky. Anarky was a teenage vigilante that struck out at the lawful but awful people of Gotham. Think big polluters, immoral capitalists that exploited people and harmed the environment. His name was Lonnie Mitchin, and he was a smart kid who constructed a costume that made him seem to be much bigger than he actually was, and armed himself with a powerful taser staff. I suppose his status as a villain will vary depending on your stance on capitalism and the immoral actions of the military-industrial complex, but he was definitely framed as someone that had a point, who would intervene in matters that Batman generally stayed away from. And that sounds pretty similar to Kenny. When we first meet Kenny, he's introduced as a genius, so it's safe to assume that he built the Payback suit. It completely makes sense that Kenny would model Payback on his only friend, Howard. Howard is big and strong, after all. Kenny, meanwhile, bottles up his anger and disappointment and directs that negative energy at the immoral citizens of Gotham, whose callous cruelty indirectly takes up so much of his father's time. But his story has something of a bittersweet ending. Yes, Kenny had been caught and was being sent to prison, but he had got through to his father, who went running after him, after a little nudging from the elder Batman. This was his only DCAU appearance. He didn't feature in any of the in-continuity tie-in comics primarily written by Hilary J. Bader, so it's safe to assume that, having his error pointed out, Dr. Stanton made more time for his son once he completed his sentence. However, in the 2010s, during the rebirth era of the Batman Beyond comics, Payback reappeared and targeted Batman. Now this is a contentious story for me because, among other things, it introduced Matt McGuinness as Robin, a very obvious idea granted, but also completely and utterly wrong in my eyes. This isn't a Matt McGuinness video, but I will just quickly summarise my objection by saying that Matt had no involvement in Batman's world, and that was very intentional. He was a normal, well-adjusted kid. The two worlds rarely mixed, and it should have stayed that way, but that's a rant for another time. In a story called The Long Payback, Payback had hired the Royal Flush Gang to weaken and apprehend Batman. When Batman overcame them, Payback resorted to his second choice, Stalker, who accepted the job because his home village was suffering a famine and they needed the money. I made a video about Stalker a few months back, and I noted that I found it particularly depressing to see Africa being portrayed this way, even in the far future. I've added that video to the info button in the top right corner as well as this video's description, so add that to your watch later list if you want to hear more about Stalker. But getting back to The Long Payback, when Stalker overstepped and almost killed Batman, Payback revealed himself and took revenge on Stalker for disobeying his orders. If he was able to take out Stalker so easily, you kind of wonder why he needed to hire someone to weaken Batman. I guess it showed a lack of faith in his own abilities. To me, it feels more like a way of artificially extending the story, and acts as an excuse to bring back more classic characters. Speaking of which, this story also reintroduced Melanie Walker as the Ten of Hearts, separate from the Royal Flush Gang, and she was kidnapped by Payback when she tried to help Batman. Payback had some impressive new technology, including a teleporter, which he used to escape and later kidnap Batman. Why didn't he just do that in the first place? But once Batman is in Payback's clutches, it is revealed that after Kenny was caught, he was sent to a young offenders institution where he was brutalized by his fellow inmates. His father was so ashamed of what Kenny had done that he stopped visiting him and left him to his fate. Feeling alone, without hope, Kenny committed suicide. So this new Payback was not Kenny, it was his father, Dr. Stanton, who blamed Batman for Kenny's death. This just did not feel at all in character to me. Dr. Stanton could be blind, yes, but he wasn't stupid. He didn't blame Kenny, he blamed himself, and the episode ending with him vowing to do better, even though it clearly didn't come naturally to him. His compassion for other people, while being blind to the needs of his genius son, is his character flaw. He assumed that because Kenny was intellectually smart, that he would also be emotionally smart, but he wasn't. He was just a boy that needed his dad. To just turn around and disown Kenny doesn't fit in my eyes. This isn't the first time I've said this. In fact, I think I say this every time I bring up the Batman Beyond comics that are written by people that didn't work on the show, but these comics just don't hit in the same way that the show did. When Dr. Stanton wallows in despair at seeing what had become of his son, he wasn't ashamed of Kenny. He was ashamed of himself for neglecting his son. When Bruce Wayne tells him that Kenny needs his father, he's not running after him to scold him, he's running after him to support him, to show him the same level of care he would have shown to one of his patients. Dr. Stanton's neglect led to Kenny trying to solve other people's problems, so his dad wouldn't have to work so hard and that they could spend time together. But this was an inexperienced child, very intelligent, true, but still a child. I'm sure that some parallels could be drawn to Batman in this case. They're both miners in powerful suits, enacting their version of justice on wrongdoers. But Terry was guided by Bruce Wayne and dealt with very different kinds of issues, things that the police struggled with like kidnappings, corruption, the abuse of power. The kinds of problems Payback tried to address were smaller and of no interest to the police at all. Interpersonal imbalances of power, and he tried to even things out with violence. As much as it might bring us personal satisfaction to lash out against the people hurting our feelings, it wouldn't solve the underlying issue. And Payback just could not see that. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my current channel members, who are all listed on the screen right now. Next time I'll be consulting the results of my latest Superman the Animated Series villain poll to talk about a DCAU original villain that very few people seem to care about. An encouraging topic for a video if ever I saw one. We're going to talk about the obsessive stalker, Luminous. Hope to see you then.